So my mama's mama and daddy, that would be your great-grandparents, they lived in this little house. They owned this little house right here, the little green roof. And when my mom divorced from her first husband, she came back to Richland and lived with Joe in that little house with her mom and dad. She came back to town, and she worked in a little power company right down the street here in Richland. And my dad was one of the 4 boys that ran the newspaper, and he came back to town after having served in the service in 1945. My mother came back to town after having lived away. Joe was, a product of her first marriage, and they met in Richland. My dad, walking down the streets of Richland, stopped in to say hello to the local merchants and people downtown, and met my mom. Of course, she had grown up in Richland, and he had grown up in Lumpkin. Your grandparents, but your great-grandparents lived right there. Cicero Hobbs and Maggie Hobbs. They were my mama's parents. And we have a picture of Cicero sitting out on that porch, and he died sitting out on that porch. I never knew Cicero and Maggie. Both of them passed away before I was born.
Wow.
But my grandmother, Maggie Hobbs, she lived until 1951. So it was just a year before I was born that she died.
Wow. It's a cool story.
Yep. And then he had a little grocery store. Cicero ran a little grocery store. It was either this building right here on the corner, or it was this building. Joe would know for sure. But Cicero's grocery was right there. That's
cool. Living right next to the
that's all my
grocery
mama's
store,
side of the family. Then on my father's side of the family, although the Anglins lived in Lumpkin, bought out the newspaper, consolidated the Lumpkin.
Grandfather John Milton Sr.
John Milton Anglin Sr.
bought out the newspaper.
He bought out the 2 newspapers. There was a Lumpkin Independent and a Richland, and he combined them into the Stewart Webster Journal. In this little building, right here, was the printing office. This white building with that was the Stewart Webster Journal printing office. And my dad and his 3 brothers, when their father died, they ran that company until my dad became the postmaster.
Cool.
And this old house down here is where Carolyn and Red lived when they first got married. This old house.
Really? They used to live here.
It was beautiful, this old house in the corner.
And now they are scrapping it.
Looks like it's being scrapped.
That is quite the home.
And then I'm going to take you around the block here and show you where I went to junior high school.
Okay.
So at my 7th and 8th grade year, they bused us over here to Richland. The 2 schools consolidated, Richland and Lumpkin. Still, there were 2 separate black and white school systems, but this was my junior high school. So again, I rode the bus over here from Lumpkin, went to the 7th and 8th grades over here in Richland. And the auditorium, part of this burned because there's a section of this. There was a big gymnasium right here where I played basketball, and that's all gone.
Wow.
The gym burned down. And that little building right back there with the white slab door,
Yeah.
that's where I took my first typing class. I learned to type. Miss Adams was the teacher.
Right there.
Yep.
Cool. Wow. Typing, referring to typewriters.
Typewriters.
Amazing. That is so cool.
Isn't that cool? I'm just going to ride.
There's a lake down here.
There's a lake.
Are there any stories from the lake?
Don't know any stories from the lake. I
Okay.
didn't know that much about Richland except having come to school, and of course the history of my family. My mother
Right.
having lived over here, and my dad running the printing office. It's kind of like a second hometown for me in a way, even though I don't know all the the people in Richland the way I knew all the people in Lumpkin.
Gotcha. Wow.
Yeah. This is the back side of the school. There's the little typing. Where I learned to type. I guess you'd call it keyboarding nowadays, right?
And here is your middle school. High school? Middle school? High school.
This was in the consolidated school. This was the junior high middle school.
Okay.
But back in 1964, when I was beginning writing my diary, Richland High School and Richland Elementary and Junior High were all in this building.
Wow.
And then when the schools consolidated, the junior high stayed here in Richland. The high school was over in Lumpkin.
Gotcha. It's a cute little church.
Yeah. Is that a little Methodist church? We used to have music lessons from school. The piano music department would hold our choir services and teach us how to sing and carry a tune over. It was funny.
It is funny. Oh man, this is so cool. Thanks for taking us around. Fun little story time.
Fun little story time. Again, the Webster Journal printing business. Newspaper office, and next to it was a dry cleaners.
We've seen the whole town twice now. This is so cute.
And this is going up, coming down Main Street. That was a peanut. You know, a lot of peanut farming done here.
Peanut processing plant.
Yep, where they would bring in the harvest and shell the peanuts.
Jimmy Carter built that place by hand.
No, Jimmy Carter didn't build
he
that one.
didn't. Okay.
Okay, and this is the main street of Richland. A lot of the stores are deserted now. But it's actually more thriving than Lumpkin. But you can see most of the storefronts are
More thriving than Lumpkin.
storefronts. This is an old hotel right here on the corner.
Whoa.
Now it's used as some other, but I can remember a doctor's office being in there when I was growing up.
Wow.
Yeah, flower shops were down here, grocery
Boutiques.
stores and drug stores. And this is the
Auto
big
insurance.
Richland Rum Manufacturing Company that bought this area
Yep.
a few years ago, and they're doing an operation out of here.
It's real nice.
Fairly current.
That's what we have on top of our fridge,
Yeah.
with little or no explanation. Some
Carrie
Richland rum.
brought that to me when she visited.
That's great.
That's the New Stewart Webster Journal building. He still prints a county newspaper.
Wow.
Farmer State Bank. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And then I'm going to take you right down this way for a second.
Okie doke. And Carolyn's house right down that
Aunt
street.
Carolyn's house is right down that street. So when I was growing up, there were two main restaurants in town. The T&T was right here in this building. Kind of a fancy little come over for Sunday dinner. And then way down here was the steakhouse.
It's
and it
way
was
down here.
right down there, that pink building.
Okay.
That was the steakhouse, and that's where on Friday nights kids would drive over to the steakhouse and have a hamburger and french fries. It was a kind of a congregation place for young people. That's it.
Wow.
It was a thriving little restaurant, that little building.
They almost still have a sign. Almost. What was it called?
The steakhouse.
Cool.
And this Kalin Court was built in the early 60s. This was pretty snazzy for Richland. This was their motel, so to speak. Looks like it's a place for homeless people.
Now it's a barber shop.
Oh, really?
There's just someone cutting someone's hair out in the parking lot.
No.
It's cool. It happens.
Kalin Court.
What does it feel like driving through, seeing things like this?
There is a very weird feeling of just sadness of how dilapidated and run down everything is. You know, this little thriving restaurant.
I think that guy likes his haircut.
Look at it, it's just old and deserted, and windows are knocked out. You know, when is
So that was a place you'd hang out with friends.
That's a place I hang out with friends.
And now it's like that. Weird.
And yeah, it's just like the little park, still some semblance of normalcy. And again, this was another little restaurant, the little green building. The only restaurant, I think there are two left in Richland now. The Red's Pizza has become a pretty successful little business here in Richland.
It's cute. They have a little
That's where
painting.
Aunt Carolyn says she eats there twice a week. We're turning on Aunt Carolyn Street.
Okay. Thanks for the little walkthrough. This was really pretty. And for your thoughts about it. It's so interesting.
It's very, very strange to be
Check out those columns.
40 years later back here. I graduated from college in 1974. Ooh, they're having some sort of shindig down at the Legion Hall.
Ooh. Okay, say that again.
We used to have a Saturday night dance there. During the school year, there'd be, something for the young people to do.
And it is still an American Legion Hall.
It's still an American Legion Hall. Looks like they still do some sort of celebration stuff there.
Cool.
This was a sad story that Aunt Carolyn told us about this house. Somebody from Massachusetts bought it, came down here,
Bought it online.
was going to try to live in this little small southern town. Not a good fit.
I wonder if her water pressure is better than Aunt Carolyn's. I wonder. I wonder. Maybe that's every house in town.
I don't
Who
think it
knows?
is. I think Aunt Carolyn's just not
Well, you know.
getting the attention she needs.
Thanks for the walkthrough of small town in Georgia.
You're welcome.
Real cool.